Calling Baba Ijesha a pedophile may be arming him with the exact defense he needs to not serve a single day in jail. Now, we need to be really careful when we throw that word around, pedophile, that we understand the differences between a pedophile and a child molester. Who is a pedophile? A pedophile is someone who has an exclusive sexual interest towards children or vulnerable people. Now, a lot of pedophiles exhibit sexual attractions towards kids of about 12 or 13 years old and younger, prepubescent age. And other pedophiles may exhibit sexual attraction towards pubescent age children or vulnerable adults. Now, for someone to be called a pedophile, first of all, they need to be diagnosed with the pedophilia disorder. And that criteria is set out by the DSM. And the current DSM, I believe, is DSM-5. And the DSM is short for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So most of the mental disorder, all the mental disorders that you can think about, they have strict criteria and they follow the DSM. Now, according to the DSM, for someone to be called a pedophile, right? Also, someone to be diagnosed with pedophilia disorder, it's a bit of a mouthful there, pedophilia disorder, the person needs to, one, have the urges that have disrupted their lives, right? Like the disorder is so much that they can't function normally as members of the society. They're always fantasizing about children. They're always thinking about, how they're going to act out on that urge. Or they've acted out on the urge already. They need to be 16 years of age or older, and the person whom they're having that sexual, feelings towards, right, need to be at least 5 years younger than they are. So then it's really strict. It's a very strict criteria that if people are not within that, you cannot call them a pedophile. Now, let me tell you why this is important. Because a child molester, on the other hand, is mostly someone who, resorts to molesting children in a maladaptive attempt to satisfy their emotional needs. So most times they put themselves in a position of trust and authority so that they are able to gain access to that child. Another thing that you need to know is pedophiles they feel like that the children want this, like they're in love with the children and the children are in love with them. That's what goes on in their minds. They don't see it as anything that is wrong, right? Because it's a mental illness. So what they do is, a pedophile might spend their entire lives maneuvering to get close to a child. A pedophile might become close to an adult only because they want to get access to that child. So we need to be aware and mindful of these signs so that when we start to see them, an adult that has an odd or an awkward liking towards a child, there's always like, oh, let me do this, let me do that. That is one of the warning signs. So we need to be mindful about this. I got a lot of questions from my last video, and I decided to make this one so that I can shed a little bit more light on this. For people that are pedophiles, a lot of times they don't serve a jail sentence. Instead, they're sent into a mental institution, or they're sent into some other form of treatment, mental illness treatment centers that can help them manage that disorder. There is no cure for pedophilia. You can only manage it. And even that is a lifelong commitment if they are willing and voluntary, if they voluntarily want that treatment, because you can't force them unless it's court mandated, right? So we need to be careful when we throw around that word, oh, you're a pedophile, or you're this, you're that. Because if they're a child molester, chances are they will go to jail if they're found guilty. But a pedophile may end up just spending a couple months even in a facility to help them reorient them into and reintegrate them into the society. I made a few points because I want to touch on a couple things that people asked me about, right? Do we have a justice system in Nigeria, or, most African countries don't really have a justice system. I saw somewhere that there's a limit on the statute of limitation to reporting sexual offenses, especially in this case. Mind-boggling, ridiculous, right? So everything that I've been talking about is all about prevention, because if you like it or not, this is a problem. And there's a growing community of pedophiles out there, and they're also trying to get noticed and trying to become, have like a designated sexual orientation. I think that might already be a thing. They call themselves the minor attracted persons. Have you ever heard a thing like that before? Yeah, but it's happening, right? Because this is the world we live in. So I'm not here to blame parents or anything. That's not what my other video was about. I'm only trying to tell us, because I'm a parent myself, that we need to have our eyes open. We need to be watchdogs. There isn't any sexual offenders list in Nigeria, to my understanding, where people that have been found out of these crimes or things, you know them, whether they're pedophiles or whatever, they're on a sex offenders list. There isn't any kind of a system where people who distribute or who, watch child pornography are, what's it called now, are flagged. There's no system where that happens. So it falls on us. I keep saying that. It falls on us. I'm not blaming anyone, but it falls on us parents to do more. Another point someone talked about is, okay, so treatment. Let me quickly go back a little bit. Treatment for pedophilia. There's little things that you can do, right? Because there's no cure. You can manage it only if that person is willing to. One of the managements are maybe psychotherapy or medications. Some medications they can use are anti-androgens, right? Where they help to alter the person's sex drive or reduce the testosterone. There's some pedophiles who don't want to offend, who try not to offend, who have willingly gone in for chemical castrations or surgical castrations as well. But you can't really tell when they're going to offend or if they're going to offend. So there's a really gray area that we can't really just fold our arms and be like, oh, okay, they may never offend, because you just don't know. Right? There's also some kind of perspective that, pedophilia comes from, like people were born that way, right? There's also some studies and stuff that it's neurodevelopmental and stuff that happened in utero, and that happened, right? And then there's the environmental factors where people feel like most pedophiles were also like abused as a child, so that then there's that cycle of victim, abuser, and abuser, victim. It's just a vicious cycle that keeps going, right? I'm not defending pedophiles. I'm just saying that it is really, really difficult. Here in the developed world, we're trying so hard to manage it, and we're falling short all the time, not to talk about like developing countries like Nigeria, right? Someone said to me, oh, but so my niece likes to be free. She likes to be free, and should she not be free? Should they not fall upon the adults to control themselves? So maybe someone who, if a lady wears a short skirt and she gets raped, does that mean that it was because she wore the short skirt? Let me tell you something. So omod kekeke o wokpata o sare kakiri ninu compound or ninu palo, and I want friends here, I want neighbors one around. She yeda ero. Do you understand? Like, it's ridiculous. At the end of the day, you probably will never get any recourse from the law. We are the parents. We need to take charge. You call that child to order and you tell them to put their underwear back on, right? Why will you be running around without any underwear? Because oma like wa free. Oma like free araye. Futani. Free araye ninu bathroom now, or free araye ninu room. But you do that where other people are. Makes absolutely no sense to me, right? So I don't want this video to be too long. Oh, another thing is, pedophiles have the highest recidivism rates after incarceration of all the sex offenders, right? Because those urges, they can't control it. I'll give you an example of when I was working with a known pedophile. I would need to receive him. The company that drops him off would call to say this person is arriving. I would need to be out there, watch him get off the bus, and be with him everywhere. When he's going to the bathroom, I have to get in there, check and make sure no one is around. Be in there within the bathroom. He's not allowed to go into the parks. He's not allowed to go anywhere with kids. But kids are everywhere, right? They're not only at the parks, they're everywhere. So how are you going to do that? And you always have to keep watch, because every second, if I need to take a break, someone is taking over. Who can, allocate that much resources to that one person? And imagine how many thousands and millions of pedophiles are around. They are monsters living in our midst. And we cannot always, let us castrate them, or let us, resort to violence or anything. Unless not dimbo. But again, I'm not advocating for violence. So I just want to let us know that there are these things that are super, super important. No statute of limitation on sexual offenses is unheard of. That is why a country like America and other developed countries, people like R. Kelly and Bill Cosby can be in jail right now because of things that they did like decades ago. We are not there yet. Let us protect our kids and stop all this. Oh, you're blaming the victim. Oh, who is this and that and that. There are monsters living with us, in plain clothes, as pastors, as imams, as prophets, as choir leaders, as friends, as families, as cousins, as neighbors. There are monsters in our midst. We need to have our eyes open. And so that when you've done everything possible that you can do, and I'm not asking you to live in paranoia, but if that is going to help you save your child from unwarranted sexual advances, then maybe you should think about that. Right? So, I'm just trying to, think about, look at some other, I said that, I mentioned that there's this orientation where, they're trying to get their own sexual orientation to become, part of like the LGBTQ and all of that. So this is the world we live in. This is the world we live in, and y'all need to be ready, because over 80%, even maybe 90% or more, of people in our generation were abused, molested, raped as children. Do we want to continue in that vicious cycle, or do we want to try to break it? Do we want to say that awareness so that things start to get better? Is that that should be our next focus, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I have. I don't really have any more. The last thing that I want to talk about, the last thing before you guys go, the last thing is let your children have a voice. Let your children have a voice. A lot of parents, and sometimes I'm guilty of this as well, when your kids call you, oh, hello, mommy or daddy, you're like, I'm busy. Oh, wait, let me talk to you later, or this or that. No, you need to drop everything you're doing. I have started to intentionally practice that. Drop everything you're doing and listen to that kid. It takes an enormous amount of strength and bravery for your kids to come out and say to you, mommy, I was raped. Daddy, I was abused. Someone touched my private parts. Someone did this to me. It takes an enormous amount of strength and bravery. So when your kids call you and they say, oh, mommy, you're like, go later, I'm busy. Or go and do this. That might be the only chance that kid has to come and talk to you. And maybe you might backtrack later and say, okay, come, what did you want to talk about? And they're saying, no, mommy, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's done. You've lost that opportunity. Let your kids have a voice. Stop shutting them down. Create a safe space for these kids to come to you and be able to tell you anything. I'm not saying that you should forget your role as a parent and just be their friends. No, because kids will always push boundaries, but you have to find a balance. You have to be able to create that safety net where they can tell you things like that. I started talking to my own kids about sex from a very young age, and I still talk to them. I have my daughter is not even up to a year old, and I check her to make sure that she's fine. Speaking of a year old, I recently read an article about some pedophiles within an online forum where one of them confessed to having the most sexual attraction towards 1-year-old girls. Can your mind wrap around that? That is the world we live in. those can be your co-workers. You just don't know. Stop leaving everything to the grace of God and, oh, it is the devil's work. No. You need to play your own part. I need to play my own part so that we can save these children from an unimaginable future. Because damaged kids eventually end up becoming damaged individuals, damaged adults who go on to damage other kids and or adults.